news.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let me follow my learned colleague here, Dr. Honeychurch, and also thank the moderator for recognizing all the very important people gathered here and therefore permits me to adopt the protocols already established. It's a pleasure to be here representing the ECCB. I've been asked to speak on the CBI as a tool for financing development and not consumption. I intend to touch briefly on the characteristics and economic performance of Dominica and on sustainable development and its financing. Looking quickly at the characteristics of Dominica, because you're all familiar with that, and it is broadly similar to that of the other ECCU countries, Anguilla, Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, Montserrat, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We know that Dominica is small, open, vulnerable to external shocks and natural disasters, and I don't have to remind you of that. Population is not only small, but dispersed throughout the island, and this has negative implications for the cost of infrastructure per capita and for fiscal and debt sustainability. We have in Dominica large infrastructure needs, but the tax base is narrow and cannot fund all of government's agenda. Over the last 10 years, economic growth has averaged about 1.6%. This is very low. And we are all too familiar that just one trough or one storm can derail or throw the economy off a cliff. Tropical Storm Erica, and the FS spoke about that, cost 1.3 billion in damages and resulted in a contraction of 2.5% in GDP. This year, 2017-2018, there's a projection for 3.1% in GDP, and we're just about to meet the target set in the Growth and Social Protection Strategy. But it is still very low. At the ECCB, we're saying let's try to target a growth rate of about 5%. And most of the growth we noted for this year and next year will be driven by construction activity, expected to be funded largely by CBI funds. The country's fiscal position and consequently its debt dynamics have been impacted by the negative effects of the natural disasters. In the last 3 years, however, we've seen an expansion in public revenues, earnings from the CBI. Coming from the ECCB, I must assure you that the financial sector is stable. Non-performing loans are still a bit high, but they're coming down, they're trending downwards, and we continue to work on resolving issues in that sector. In 2015, countries around the world adopted goals geared towards sustainable development. Goals every citizen wants. Goals to improve their well-being and the quality of life for communities. These goals address issues of poverty, education, energy, inequality, unemployment, inclusive growth, to name just a few. Crucial as well is the adoption of new technologies and a move to more of an industry-based economy. It is a tough and very tall agenda, I believe. There are also many challenges in meeting these sustainable development goals, both at the national level and international level. Nationally, as I previously mentioned, Dominica has large infrastructure needs. Dr. Honeychurch spoke about the terrain of Dominica. We are vulnerable to natural disasters. These disasters are more frequent and more intense, resulting in government, as Dr. Honeychurch indicated, having to constantly rebuild infrastructure with limited tax receipts. There are competing needs and increasing demands for water, education, health, public services. Internationally, there are also a number of long-term trends that we're seeing. Climate change, migration, these are all reshaping the global landscape. Other global challenges, public health crisis, we know of the SARS, the mad cow disease, the chickpea, the Zika, terrorism, and slower and unequal global economic growth. Therefore, a key issue for any government is how to finance development without placing undue burden on the populace? Can government reallocate existing resources towards sustainable development and use it more effectively? Can it raise new and additional resources? In 2014, a UN Intergovernmental Committee on Sustainable Development Financing acknowledged that each country is responsible for its own development and has to use different types of finance to meet its needs, but in a holistic way. If we quickly look at the types or sources of financing available to any government, the FS touched on those, but I think it's worth repeating. Firstly, domestic public finances through taxation, which should be fair, efficient, and transparent. How much can citizens and residents be taxed? How wide is the country's tax base? How big is its private sector? Secondly, loans. This would build up the debt and move the country away from achieving the Monetary Council approved debt to GDP target of 60% by 2030. We advocate pursuing debt on a concessional terms where available, but all that has to be carefully analyzed. Thirdly, development aid or grants. Friendly countries are faced with all the international challenges that I spoke of earlier, as well as their own national challenges. They are not able to give grants, and when they do, not at the levels as they did in the past. Fourthly, private international finance with proper vetting and due diligence has a role to play. We've heard, and I will repeat again, governments around the world have turned to CBI programs as a tool for economic development. Funds from CBI programs complement traditional resource flows, mobilize additional resources for development. It can be an essential tool as the country strives to raise living standards, protect the environment, adapt to climate change realities, and provide public goods. Driving sustainable development goals require hundreds of millions of resources. Public domestic finances are not enough. The CBI program in Dominica has generated a considerable amount of inflows in recent years, and this has come amidst falling grants and in the wake of Tropical Storm Erica. The funds have been used to fund some essential projects and replace debts. There is now the opportunity to fast-track the sustainable development goals by financing renewable energy, more resilient infrastructure, growth-inducing projects, and social programs targeted at the vulnerable. CBI resources can also be used to create stronger institutions and the enabling environment for the private sector. For 2016, just to give an example, we estimated that without CBI funds, the country would have had a significant fiscal gap, a large deficit, roughly 11% of GDP. And without the CBI funds, higher debt levels would be required to carry out its development agenda, and probably lower growth would have resulted. There are, of course, risks to the program, political, reputational, and the ECCB advocates that the authority should maintain the integrity of the program and use the funds to clear arrears, pay down your debts, finance infrastructure and productive sector investments, as well as establish a resiliency or vulnerability reserve fund in line with best international practices. Also to be transparent and accountable with respect to the flows. And this actually is a decision of the 86th meeting of the Monetary Council from October 2016. We recommend that targeted sectors for projects be diversified and that projects be in line with your medium-term public sector investment program and government's overall objectives. In conclusion, to quote from Sir Ronald Sanders, Antigua and Barbuda's ambassador to the US, there is nothing essentially wrong with the CBI programs or with their merit as development tools. It is the rigor of the implementation that is important, and upon such a rigor should all of the ECCU insist. Thank you.